All right. Time and space has been bridged, and the moment in which you have just hit play and the moment in which I have just hit record have come together. Here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. If this is your first time ever listening, welcome to you. Everyone else, what is up? How is everyone doing? We just had a holiday here in the United States. I don't know that everybody listening to this would have celebrated or participated in that. But now we got this little couple weeks calm before the final winter holiday and New Year. And it's a cliche to say it, but it's largely true. It can be quite a mixed bag. Often it's the time that we get back together with our families, and long-time listeners know I have often recorded and shared with you about my trips to Virginia. We are going to Virginia this year, as we have every year for, now more than a decade. And I don't know how your holiday was. I hope it went okay. I hope things were all right. There was all that sort of stuff in the news about people being alarmed about having to see their family and then having different political views, and it's okay to cut your family off, which I think is insane. I don't know if any of you listening to this saw that in the news, but I think that's crazy. Of course, I have shared on this show before other years where I completely blew up Christmas with me and my father-in-law talking politics and getting in a massive fight. But I'm very happy to say that this Thanksgiving holiday in 2024 couldn't have been any better. In fact, me and my father-in-law, we're kind of in a similar place politically now, which is sort of funny. But I think more than that, we've all just matured. And even more than that, everybody recognized that all of our children and all of us together, we were all doing well. Like, everybody had their health and everybody was doing okay. And given everything that's happened over the last few years, that wasn't always the case. And I think everybody just recognized how special it was that we were together and that we were all well. So I hope your holiday was okay, and that everybody's feeling okay, that your well-being is intact. And I've been reflecting quite a bit on the last few episodes that have had to do with addressing pain and feeling better. And I think some of those conversations had to do with often maybe more chronic or acute situations where people really have like pain that verges or becomes debilitating. And then you're looking to address that. You need to do some kind of intervention or some kind of way to turn that around. And we talked about ways in which someone might change their perceptual lenses and in so doing shift their pain patterns. And all the folks who've been coming into the new center, for those of you who don't know, I opened a new yoga center like 2 months ago. And the majority of the people coming, they don't really necessarily have such acute situations like that we're trying to address. I would say that they fall into the category more of wellness, that they're just looking for vehicles to foster more well-being. And they've already done everything that their doctors have told them to do. And some of their doctors have suggested that they try other complementary medicine things or So often they'll even suggest doing yoga. Of course, they never really tell them what type of yoga to do, but they will sometimes suggest yoga and meditation as a complementary alternative way to foster their well-being. And then for me, being the yoga teacher who they show up to do this with, it's an interesting challenge to meet them where they are with their expectations of what they're hoping to get out of this, and to invite them into what I see as a process. It's a process that you're learning more than like an intervention that you're doing. And the process involves all the yoga stuff, developing sustained attention and facilitating your breath and all sorts of things that we've discussed many times on this show, as well as deeper and subtler transformative aspects of that process. But it is such an interesting dynamic of someone coming from like an allopathic medicine frame, looking for an alternative form of healing. And then that alternative form of healing is often rooted in sensibilities or philosophical contexts that are certainly not looking at them in the same way that their allopathic medicine doctors are. And bridging that has sometimes felt like an impossible thing to me. I don't think it is impossible, and I think that there are overlaps. But my guest today, Anoop Kumar, is someone who is looking to do just that. He was here a little over a year ago, and we talked about a bunch of things. We were talking about Vedanta and consciousness, but in that conversation, he did say something about complementary and alternative medicines and what he thought the future of allopathic healthcare was. And recently he's got this new course called Learning the Science of Consciousness, which is something that he's putting out there specifically for wellness practitioners and the likes to invite them into what he sees as a new emerging healthcare system that's happening organically from the bottom up. Very cool stuff. It was perfect that we connected right now when we did. And I'm very happy to be sharing it with you today. Real quick before we get to it, let me take a moment to say something to anyone who has been listening to this show on a regular, like you listen every week and you feel like this is like a part of your weekly routine and you feel like you're getting something from it and you enjoy that this show is in your life and you're not a podcast premium subscriber, I would like to encourage you to consider becoming one. Frankly, we're getting to the end of the year, and once again, I'm looking at where my time is spent and what my money situation is and stuff. And, you know, given how many people do seem to listen to the show on a regular compared to how many people are podcast premium subscribers, it wouldn't take that many more people to have a big impact. And I know I've said this before in the past, and I'm feeling compelled to say it again now, that if you can afford as little as $5 a month to be a podcast premium subscriber, and you're not already, it would really make a difference for me. And I'm just so grateful to anyone who's already doing that. Also, not to mention, you get access to the full-length archives of the show. So again, if you are in a position to do so, perhaps you would take a moment to be a supporter and get a podcast premium subscription. Also, if you're interested in connecting with me in other ways, I've got lots of stuff on offer. There's live classes, there's a weekly discussion group, there's on-demand continuing education, All of my stuff, Podcast Premium and the rest, can be found at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, y'all, we are going to leave it there. I will touch base with you on the other side, but let's go ahead and get to it. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Anoop Kumar. Hello?
What's going on, brother?
Hello, Anoop.
Good to hear you again.
Good to hear you. How's it going?
It's going quite well. I'm glad we got to meet so quickly.
Me too. I am already recording, so please, let's consider ourselves having just begun, okay?
Absolutely.
And there's a reason why we're talking again so quickly. And I mean, so other people who would be listening to this know what we're talking about. It's not that we're speaking again so quickly, because the last time you were here, I looked it up, was July of 2023.
Wow.
So it's been 16 months. It sure seems like longer, doesn't it?
Yeah. Seems like
it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
But what I mean is that you reached out to me, and then I got back to you, and then we were recording this quickly after being in touch.
Right.
And the reason for that is there's quite a lot of synchronicity behind you reaching out again when you did.
Mm-hmm.
Because back in July of 2023, I didn't go back and listen to it. I was planning to, but I didn't get a chance. But I kind of have a memory. I don't know what you remember of our last conversation, but I remember I titled it Insufficiency of the Biopsychosocial Model. Is something that you had said that was very significant to me. At that time, quite frankly, I was really just wanting to explore some boundaries beyond materialism.
Yeah.
Because I was having quite a bit of experiences with a higher power, you know?
Yeah.
And we had a whole conversation about consciousness.
We did. You were really into asking really the subtleties and nuances of Advaita, which I thought was really cool. You know, we just didn't do it in a superficial way, and we talked about a lot of the nuance.
Exactly, because those questions have a lot to do with what was going on with me at that time. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that you had mentioned at that time, which frankly, I think in the moment I wasn't as interested in or as focused on, mm-hmm. but was certainly intriguing, and I took note of it, was mm-hmm. this idea of the need to invert primary and complementary care.
Yes.
You were like, oh, what we're calling complementary medicine now, like your diet and eating and all this other stuff, going out in the sun and whatnot.
Right.
This complementary medicine really should be primary care.
Yes.
And then this allopathic stuff, when you've got stuff going on that you might need other kinds of intervention, that should be the complement.
It is. It absolutely is. The highest use and the highest role and the true rightful place of allopathy is complementary medicine. You know, when I say we, I'm an ER doc, and we allopathic doctors, and I know many of them may not like this, you know, my fellow colleagues, but I truly believe in a true health system, we are complementary medicine. And in that capacity, we can do great good.
I think that's true. Interesting to note that you felt important to mention that your colleagues may not like it before you say it.
Yeah.
There's like a little bit of a disclaimer on it almost, because you kind of know that it does challenge certain norms or conventions, which is what we were talking about last time, if I recall.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disclaim it. It's not a disclaimer, but I feel for my colleagues, you know, like I know what it feels like to, you know, put in a lot of time and energy, and sacrifice a lot, you know, which I know some of that maybe is not in the general public understanding, but some of the training is brutal, and it shouldn't be, but it is. And to go through that and then to have a realization, which I think every doctor does at some level of conscious/subconscious, that we're doing some things to help people, but a lot of what we're doing is just kind of treading water, and in some case, hiding things. by virtue of what we're not saying. And everybody knows, all doctors know that to some extent. The extent varies. And I feel for them, these are my colleagues. I work alongside them. And it's not just doctors, it's nurses too. And so it's 100% not a disclaimer. It's a statement that we have some difficult ideas to face. We have some difficult history to cope with. And that's part of the future of allopathic healthcare professionals.
It does. I mean, I hope that's what the future of allopathic healthcare professionals is going to be. It might not, but I really appreciate what you're saying, because I'm not trained as a doctor, but I've certainly kind of had to come up against the system, like the Western medicine system that we have.
Yeah.
And kind of the limitations, the benefits of it and the limitations of it.
Yeah. And the major limitation is really how we see the human being. Now, you're a yogi, so you know about chakras, you know about nadis, you know about energy, you know it conceptually and you know it experientially, like you feel it in your life. But in allopathy, what we learn is that you can model a human being as a bunch of parts, whether it's the brain and the bones and the muscles and so on, or whether it's protons and neutrons and electrons. And that is at odds with all major healing systems, whether it's Ayurveda or traditional Chinese medicine. All of these recognize a fundamental intelligence and energy that is even prior to our physical representation. And so that is why I say that all of these systems, including Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, acupuncture, chiropractic, all of these are the true primary care. And all wellness practitioners are going to be the leaders and the primary care in this emerging new health system.
That was what was going to be my next kind of question. Was sort of like, what have you been doing since I spoke to you last? And you mentioned to me you have this new Learn the Science of Consciousness, and it seems like you are gearing it towards specifically like wellness practitioners. And you say that wellness practitioners are the future of healthcare. Now, yes. The other reason why that's somewhat synchronicitous is I did just have this conversation with somebody, and a sort of adjunct of it was there's all this stuff going on right now with the International Association of Yoga Therapists, which is for yoga teachers really like the point of intersection where yoga teachers were really trying to kind of bring yoga into Western medicine. Okay. And I was sort of involved in some very early talks that they were having when they were developing standards for it. And I ultimately decided that I didn't want to have anything to do with yoga therapy because they were really seeming to me to go in a more clinical direction. Okay. And I felt that there is a kind of limitation, as you just articulated, to having to work within a certain frame of what a human being is and what they are. They parts are like you just said, it makes me think at the time I wrote something and I used the example of midwives because I knew someone who was a midwife and she had been working within a hospital setting and at some point determined that she couldn't do that anymore because she wasn't actually able to do her work there because of those limitations. So in any case, more recently, there's been a big hubbub in the yoga therapy world. And it's just kind of come up again for me in my mind of like, where is the intersection between like a yoga based reality or an idea of reality based in yoga, as you were just saying, and like the allopathic medicine system? Because in the last few years, honestly, like the system asserted itself in new ways that I had never seen before. So I guess it is a conscious choice on your part. I'm curious about it, why you're choosing to focus on wellness practitioners. Because isn't that mean kind of departing from the medical world?
Man, thank you for asking the question. I mean, it's a really important, beautiful, powerful question. Couple things to say about it. One is, what is the medical world? Like, how are we defining healthcare? This idea that healthcare is hospital systems and clinics and doctors and nurses, that's gone. That's gone. And pharma and biotech and health insurance companies, that's gone. That that idea ain't coming back. Now, I know people who are hearing this are like, what are you talking about? Like, that's still the main system.
I have to go to do Obamacare website thing and get my new health insurance plan because in the next 6 weeks. So
I get it. I get that. And I see what you're saying, but trust me, this idea is on its way out. And here's what's happening, right? So healthcare has seen the human being incompletely. And because of that, is really focused on treatments, and for many conditions, most conditions, does not actually heal people, right? And there's this gaping hole in what it can do and what it needs to do, and in the market as well. And that's why the wellness industry has boomed over the last 20 years. And now it's growing super fast. It's growing faster than healthcare, right? But the wellness industry is also, it's so varied and so sorted that it's not clear what the science is behind many of the things. So while it still works for many people on an individual level, it's very difficult to systematize it as the new healthcare because of that inconsistency. That's where the science of consciousness comes in, right? So what I'm saying is that this idea that we can see the human being incompletely, it's gone. The market has spoken. Healthcare now, every hospital system is talking about wellness now, even if they don't know what it means, right? Because they can't afford not to, because the market is moving on. And so we are moving into this time of healing. Everybody who has ever wanted that to happen, it's important to recognize that this is that moment. So when I'm speaking to wellness practitioners, what I mean is everyone who is buying into this idea of wellness, who is experiencing this, who is practicing this, who is teaching this. So I don't mean it can only be Ayurveda Vaidyas or only yogis or only meditators, but guess what? Regular allopathic doctors also meditate. Many of them meditate. Many of them do yoga. Many of them have a mindfulness practice, right? So when I say wellness practitioners, I don't mean, I'm not excluding MDs. I'm not excluding RNs. I'm saying all the people who not only bought into it, but who have some kind of practice, some kind of wellness practice. And specifically, especially if you're teaching, it's important to understand that this aspect of you is the emerging new health system. And what we need to put all of this on the same level to understand Reiki, to understand Ayurveda, to understand yoga, in the same vein, understand surgery, understand medications and how all this works together. What we need to do that is solve the mind-body, quote unquote, mind-body problem. It's not a problem, but it's a problem for us because of the way we conceptualize things. And that is the science of consciousness. The science of consciousness is what unlocks the so-called mind-body problem and reveals the unity of mind and body, which allows us to understand the entire range of energy, whether it's expressing as chakras or whether it's expressing as our physicality.
Well, I think first, thank you for that. And then I would say most of the people listening to this are sort of like yoga folks. And so they're kind of already there.
Yeah.
They're already open to what you just said about like a more expansive idea about consciousness. It's where it kind of like overlaps or interfaces. I'll give you a perfect example where, my wife, whatever, it's come time for her to get another mammogram. And I just read a whole thing about like the actual numbers on how much getting early mammograms actually helps prevent stuff, or actually seems to kind of create a lot of stuff. And sort of like, again, so if you're somebody who's living in the world and you're doing all these wellness practices, and maybe you're a wellness practitioner, and then you're having to kind of navigate this world that we live in, which is kind of relying much more upon a material basis of ideas of what we are and who we are. I guess that's kind of, it feels like you're talking about them kind of coming together, or are you talking about us just going in a totally different direction?
I'm talking about all of us coming together, but like I said before, not everybody is going to like that because of the power structures in place. What you mentioned about mammograms, we can say that comes under the broad title of evidence-based medicine and what the evidence shows. And the truth is, there's a lot of power in that, right? Because who has the money to pay for evidence-based medicine? Who has the money to run multi-million dollar trials, right? It's not everyday people. It's probably not the Ayurveda community for the most part. It's probably not, generally speaking, the majority of yogis, unless you're also entrepreneurs and you've done other things. So that kind of power and money is centralized in evidence-based medicine. Now, we can go down this rabbit hole of looking at all of the evidence for every single thing. And I think we have to do that, frankly. But what I'm saying is that we need to understand how health and healing work. Like, how does that happen? Before we even get to like the evidence-based practices and all those things, we don't understand the fundamental mechanism of healing. I'm not saying individuals don't. I'm not saying some of your audience doesn't. But as a system, we're talking about systemic transformation, right? It's not just for individuals. For systemic transformation, for us to achieve the healthcare transformation or reform that we've actually been dreaming about for many of us in so many ways, there has to be a deep and shared understanding of how healing happens, right? And we can talk about that, but I just want to lay out this point first, and then we can get into that.
Yeah.
And that's certainly going to include an understanding of consciousness, because if we're not including an understanding of consciousness, we're not really talking about healing. We're talking about treatments, and we're talking about it superficially. So I think that's where, while many people are on board, a lot of people will say, yeah, great, science of consciousness. In fact, I've done some consciousness practices. I've done this and I'm on board with that. We're good. Where's the health system reform?
Yeah.
That is not enough, right? Because we need to understand it from all the perspectives. How do yogis see it? How does Reiki see it? How does allopathy see it? How does medical science see it? How does neuroscience see it? What are the theories like global workspace theory or integrated information theory? How do they tie together? It is that kind of shared understanding, plus the understanding we talked about in our last show about the depth of consciousness, our own direct experience. It is the bringing together of these that's really necessary for health system transformation.
Well, I'm with you. I guess my next inquiry would be about what you said. You said, well, we need to understand how healing happens.
Yeah.
And one of the obstacles, it seems to me, that we have with that is that the answer to that is in certain ways simpler than people are almost able to accept.
Yeah. And
I know you have, what do you call it? Numocore, nutrition, movement, connection, rest, right?
Yeah. So nutrition, movement, connection, and rest is kind of a checklist or a framework of these four engines. And when you activate these four, anybody who has ever healed from anything is activating one or more of these four engines. And I'll get into that in just a second, because that's a little bit of a longer conversation. But I just want to say one part before that,
okay,
which is actually even simpler. Okay. What could possibly be simpler or more obvious than nutrition, movement, connection, and rest? Well, it's this particular aspect of connection. And this is how healing happens. It's simply alignment of our mind and body with the soul. It is the alignment and absolute continuity and flow of that soul and mind and body. And that soul it's not exactly soul in Vedanta, but we refer to it as the Atman, as we spoke about in our previous conversation. And Atman is, I love having yogis as in the conversation, because I know you all get this. When you're deep into the yoga and you see the inner light, right? The key thing is to recognize that this inner light that we see is the effervescence of Atman. This inner light by itself is not the Atman. That kind of glow that you get, that kind of enlightening that you get, that itself is the glow of the Atman. That's the self or the Atman touching or filtering through the mind. That's when you get that glow, that effervescence. But the Atman itself is beyond this. And when we touch this Atman, the mind and the body cannot help but fall into alignment. The mind and the body, it's like the banks of a river, right? The banks of the river, when you pour water, the water cannot help but flow along through those banks of that river. Similarly, when we touch the Atman is the great configurer, right? It's the great organizer. When we touch this, the mind and the body automatically come into alignment. Now, does that mean that all diseases are going to go away? No, because we have our life path, and this is one lifetime out of many. But when we touch that, we have a maximum chance of healing from all these things. And nutrition, movement, connection, and rest are simply ways to bring the mind-body part into alignment so that it can look back and see the Atman that's been running the show the whole time.
So that makes sense. That kind of comports with the idea of you're using practices and making lifestyle choices to set the conditions for you to have meditative or contemplative experience, or to experience deeper aspects of self.
Exactly. And that's what healing is, right? Healing is wholing. It's becoming whole. And so to become whole, I need to remove these distractions and misconceptions and kind of diversions of energy so I can settle in more and more deeply into the self. Isn't that what yoga is, right? To do yoga well, ultimately, it becomes an entire way of life. Yeah, initially for a newbie, it might be like a stretch or a posture or an asana, but eventually you realize that your whole life has to adjust so you can maintain this pose, this inner pose of yoga.
That's right. And it is interesting because sometimes when we have different sorts of pain, like I would make a distinction, like some people come in with like physical pains, like back pain or something. And, you know, having a conversation with them about what they're eating doesn't always seem relevant to their back pain, even though it might very well have a lot to do with their back pain. But I would say when a lot of people come in for more like mental health reasons, you know, like people are coming in to help them with their inner state and mental state. And for that, the questions around, you know, something like nutrition seems more obvious.
Right.
And I know you sort of start with nutrition. Like I did my Numocore score.
Yeah.
I got an 80%. Is that good?
All right, brother. Hey,
is that pretty good?
Bad. It's where you are, man. It's just a barometer.
I know, I'm teasing you. But I did notice that it starts out with some basic nutrition questions. So I guess my question there is, are you making a distinction of like, if we're healing something more acute, like back pain, is that different than healing something more subtle, like our mental health? And does nutrition apply to both?
Numocore applies to everything. Nutrition, movement, connection, and rest applies to everything. Now, everybody's nutrition is not going to be the same, and there are levels of it, right? So in the beginning, let's take nutrition of the body. We start with nutrition of the mind, which is what we're doing, right? It's like opening up. Wow. Oh, yeah, I see it that way. Wow, that's true. It's basically nourishing this mind. That's how we start. But nutrition of the body, while everybody has different dietary recommendations, there are very few people, you know, unless they're paid lobbyists for the most part, who are going to tell somebody to eat processed foods, for example, right?
I noticed that was one of the big questions. It was about processed foods.
Right. So despite all of the disagreement among nutrition and all the studies battling back and forth, pretty much everybody agrees, yes, eliminate processed foods, right? And eat whole foods. And that by itself would take away so many diseases. So, you know, I think all of these four are important: nutrition, movement, connection, and rest as foundations. Whether it's back pain or whether we're talking about what we call mental illness, this is important. And as you activate these engines, you develop that customization, right? Today, customization is, you know, I take a swab of my cheek and send it to the company and they come back and tell me my DNA or what I can eat and what I can't. That's fine. That's one way to do it. But how about we activate that intelligence within ourselves by removing all the distractions and the diversions of energy, right? Then that intelligence comes within myself. Yeah, I started with eliminating processed foods, but now I see that actually, you know, these vegetables don't work for me. This fruit doesn't work for me, or this kind of grain really works for me. You know, that comes from your own, you feel brighter, you feel stronger, you feel more vital, you have more insight. The mind-body divide starts to disappear. All of these things happen that are signals of healing, which is becoming whole. And then, like I said, on top of that, you have your other practices that you do, and you might even take medicine as from an allopathic perspective, or maybe surgery is needed, again, as a complementary role as and when needed temporarily. But the fundamentals are always Numocore.
Yeah, I was sort of pointing that way because I think it's true. And I know in my own life, even just maybe a year and a half ago, I just was so upset and annoyed by the bread that we got at the supermarket and like the ingredient list.
Yeah, right.
And I remember years ago reading about vegetable oil. They weren't calling it seed oils. They just said vegetable. And I remember them talking about like the chemical process they used to extract the oils really being the issue. Like you could cold press canola oil and it wouldn't be as bad,
right?
You know? But I guess more recently, and I don't mean to bring it up, we don't need to talk about it, but like in the recent election, you know, RFK's out there saying we should take all the seed oils out of our food.
Yeah.
And I guess, I don't know, my question around it is that it is a little bit more work. It's like I was saying, it's a simple thing. Okay, eat less processed foods, but it does mean getting into a new ritual. I have been baking bread like 2-3 times a week, you know?
Right.
And you got to get kind of, that is like a discipline, like to break out of just the simple go to the store and throw it in the cart. You do have to put in some discipline and some work to kind of go against what is already a very deeply entrenched grain.
It is, because these times, right? This is our society now. And so the easy things to do, in some cases, not all, but in many cases, the easy things to do are not necessarily the things that are going to get you where you want to go. Now I have found a couple breads that have a simple ingredient list that are without oil and that are super tasty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes I've found a cereal or two that fits the same bill, you know, that I put in with some hot water in the morning and I have that with some berries or something like that. So, they are out there, but yes, it takes work to find them, or it takes more work to make them yourself. And hey, that's what we are. And the other thing is, like, this is not all or nothing phenomenon, right? Let's also realize the big picture, which is that, hey, we're all born into this time. We're all here for a reason. We're not meant to be like, you know, perfectionist and worrying about every single thing down to the T. It's all right. It's all right, because there is a bigger picture here than just doing everything perfectly in this one lifetime. Right. So I say, you know, be aware, make the choices you can make, realize the role of this in the bigger picture, and get excited, baby, because this is the new health system that is here right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that, like us being easy on ourselves about it and not feeling like, oh, if we're eating something processed, we are failing or something.
Yeah.
And just to say also, for people listening, making your own sandwich bread is not hard.
Okay.
Like I got it down to, it's quick and easy in a way. You can do it. You could go on YouTube for a little while and learn how to make your own bread, and it's way better.
Okay, cool.
Well, you know, to say that, but it has made a big difference in our house, honestly, because
that's awesome.
there's connection in it.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of like me putting love into the food, and then all my family eats it, and you know, like there's a thing there, you know.
Yeah. Man, I got to tell you, on those lines, I made pizza for the first time a few months ago. Maybe not first time, but like, you know, so I got the flour, and then I made I don't know if our house has ever smelled so good as when that crust was rising. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just an amazing smell. So I know what you mean, like the connection, and your hands are all in it. It's a great feeling.
Yeah. And it also goes to something else I know that I saw acknowledged when you were talking about your new program, which is this kind of feeling of disconnection that everybody has.
Yeah.
And part of it for me was literally just giving myself things to do that mean I'm not going to be on a screen.
Yeah.
And making bread takes a little while, and it just gives me something to do.
Yeah.
And I opened a yoga center, which is a crazy thing that I did specifically just to give myself and people who live in my neighborhood something to do, somewhere to go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super nice.
So, all right. So another thing, well, first of all, I guess I want to say, I'm curious, like, do you have kind of a position on seed oils and all the food or anything? Like, what do you think about that conversation?
So first of all, I haven't done the deep research into all these kinds of oils and everything, because I kind of made a choice many years ago that I'm going to focus on what I feel like I'm here to do, which is to talk about the emerging health system, and specifically the nature of consciousness and how it relates to healing, health, and healthcare transformation. Because there's so many other topics. And then I collaborate with other experts to have these conversations and bring these conversations to our platform. So that's kind of just an overall take on how I'm working. But my sense is that, yes, a lot of these oils were kind of made, I don't know, many decades ago. And a lot of traditions weren't cooking with them. Like I know my grandmother she was using coconut oil that she made, right? It wasn't this processed stuff that you would get today.
Or, I mean, even like the Oreo cookies I was eating when I was a kid didn't have the same oils that the Oreo cookies now have.
Right. I mean, like the ingredient list has multiplied the number of things in these things. And that's how I simply kind of put all that together as processed food, right? Yeah. So whole food, like in a sense, in an apple, like if you take some cereals or some processed foods, like one of their ingredients might be apple, right? I mean, it might be 1% or 2%, 3%, what it is. But an apple is 100% apple.
Yeah.
There's no, I mean, you can break it down by the scientific names for the chemicals, but it's just apple, right? Yeah. So if you
can grow them, you can grow them,
right? You cut it up and you eat it, your ingredient list is apple, and I think even the processed food, as you're saying, that we ate as kids, right now, it seems like the same things have many more ingredients. And I don't think that's good for us. I don't think we need all these oils. Right? Keep it simple. If you want to use some oil, maybe use some coconut oil or some olive oil, and that's it. And many times you don't need oil. Yeah. Like there are so many things you can make with water, and you just add water as it dries up as you're cooking. I've done that as well. So I totally agree with that. I think keep it simple. One thing is like our taste buds, I think, have been kind of like maladjusted over decades.
And we've been conditioned to think about fat is bad, and we had anything but butter, but it's like this weird soy processed product that our grandparents are still using or whatever. There's been a lot of conditioning, a lot of marketing, essentially.
Right. And I remember the ads when I was a kid for this stuff called "I Can't Believe It's Not Butter."
Exactly.
That was the name of it.
That stuff was horrible. That stuff.
Yeah. It's like, well, believe it because it's not butter.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's all true. But eat the simple stuff. Again, nutrition, movement, connection, and rest. I think that's the key.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing that I noticed that you mentioned that I was intrigued by, you said we need sun. And I recently, it was a little while back, and I kind of won it with her in a way, which I'm happy is I have a 14-year-old daughter. Uh-huh. And she and I got in a bit of an argument about sunscreen. Uh-huh. And cause she was just putting it on when she's inside. And I'm like, why would you need sunscreen when you're not going out in the sun? Yeah. And she was like, and we argued, and she went on Google, and sure enough, it's recommended.
Wow.
By all these top, I didn't even know how to argue against it because she was showing really legit sources like our CDC and all these places recommend putting it on no matter what every day, even when you're inside. And I even kind of did some reading into different kind of skin cancers. Yeah. And a lot, the ones that are most serious are kind of rare. And the more common ones are because you don't get enough sun.
Yeah. Yeah. I
don't know. What do you think about sunscreen and the importance of sun in our lives?
I mean, the importance of sun in our lives, I'm 100% clear on. You need the sun. Okay. First of all, there's no vegetation on Earth without sun. There are no human beings here without sun. Yeah. I mean,
you don't exist without the sun. Yes.
Yeah. To put it very simply and plainly, we don't exist without the sun. And we're already living indoors so much, especially in our society. I'm a fan of sunlight myself. I haven't looked at all the studies in detail, but that again is something that I have to do with bringing an expert on. I cannot imagine why somebody would put sunscreen. I'm sure they have some explanation, but it would be hard to convince me that you need sunscreen indoors. Or even that you need sunscreen every time you go outside. I think that's too much.
I mean, I think for me, the big issue was, and what upset me in the conversation with her was the idea that essentially makes it out like the sun is poisonous.
Yeah, exactly.
If you go out in the sun, you're going to get cancer.
Yeah.
And I just that can't be true. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
That can't be true. Because as you said, the sun is essential to our existence. I don't think we should consider it that way.
I mean, the devil's in the details and how you say things and what you emphasize, what you leave out. It's all this kind of stuff. And I think marketing is such a big part of that. But let me go on record and saying I love the sun and I love sunlight.
Yes. Yes,
call me crazy.
I do too. And it just. If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.